knew what was going to happen. Some of the officials in the Justice Department and so on.
Well, I guess, because the way the question ends is with the, after the multiple Shamnesty debacles.
Yeah.
So now now they should know. They should have some sense, and yet they're in essence trying to, repeat the same things, do the same things.
When I wrote Alien Nation in '95, we went to Kennedy's office and said, look, you said X, Y, Z. He said there wouldn't be massive immigration. He said that it wouldn't be dominated by any particular flow or any particular country and all that kind of thing. What about, are you proposing that the act be changed? And the only response we got was, no, many things have changed since then. So what happened was, they created a fact and then they decided they liked it. I do think, though, that there's some evidence that some of the people in the Justice Department, some of the people who wrote the legislation, realized that how it was going to work. And they really are traitors, those people. I mean, I think it's something that really needs to be looked into.
We have a category in our blog we call sardonically the, quote, New Americans. Typically, these tend to be stories relating to generally savage behavior by people in countries, witchcraft. There's a story about 2 months ago about men in Africa who believe that their penises have been stolen due to witchcraft. People being burned at the stake in India.
Right.
And what we're the general idea of the category is that these people can get on a plane, be here 24 hours later, and they are the new Americans. Do you think it's a good idea to have people coming here, who may have been actively practicing witchcraft, or maybe the day before had a penis stolen via witchcraft, and do you think them? Let's go with that right now. So basically, do you think that's a good idea? I mean,
the point you're making is a very powerful one. I mean, we're not blank slates, tabula rasas. Everybody carries with them a culture and a heritage and so on. And we know that ethnicity matters, and it matters for a very, very long time. One of the things that, one of the interesting things about the 65 Act is that, we're able to see that these different groups come in actually do remain different for a long time. But even if you look at the great wave of immigration in the 1880s to the 1920s, where the groups coming in were much closer, particularly much closer culturally than they are now. Patterns that were obvious when those immigrants came in remained for a very long time. Groups that were predominantly unskilled took a long, long time to converge with the American national average. 4 generations later, you can still see, for example, a lot of the Italians who came in were very poor and uneducated. And for 4 generations, there was a lag. Before they started to converge with the American national average, and they were nowhere near as different to some of the people coming in now. So the effects of the immigration we're getting now will be felt for 1,000 years.
The follow-up question I had, I think you've more or less answered, but I'll just toss it out there because you have anything else you want to add. How likely do you think it is that they will assimilate in any meaningful fashion into a modern nation?
Oh, I think it's completely unlikely, particularly because the assimilative mechanism is simply not there. The way in which it was, there's no Americanization campaign as there was in the early 1900s. In fact, if anything, people are encouraged to remain separate. The other thing that's a big difference between the 1890s and now is, the nature of the welfare state. In the 1890s, if people failed in the workforce, they would go home, and very large numbers of the great wave of immigrants did go home. About 40% actually, people who came to Ellis Island appear to have gone back in the end. In some groups, it was much higher than that. In Italians, it was as high as 80% went back. Well, now, if you fail in the workforce because of the welfare state, there are things that you can get. There are subsidies you can get. Your children in school, stuff like that. So the result of that is that net immigration is now very, very much higher than it used to be. It's something like 90% of gross immigration. That means you get a completely different type of person staying. The people who might be alienated or upset for various reasons don't want to leave, various financial reasons don't want to leave. So that colours the nature of the immigrant presence here.
I know something. I'll just toss this out for people listening. I know something that we've talked a lot about in our blog is we use as an exemplar of the difference the organization LULAC. Because of course, LULAC, that many years ago, was a patriotic, pro-American, assimilative organization.
That's
now
right.
they've simply become minor La Raza, and we've often argued that is really a snapshot, a microcosm of the difference between then and now. So, Vidar in general and Steve Stahler in particular talk a lot about IQ. Is IQ important, and if so, why?
Well, you know, when I started Vidar.com was after the purge at National Review, and when those of us who were interested in immigration were just basically forced out of the magazine, and it was not possible to get any kind of facts or analysis about immigration really anywhere published in the mainstream media. This was really just as the internet was getting going. Now, I have a tendency to run, at VDare we focus very narrowly on immigration, what we call the national question, whether the US can continue as a nation state, the political expression of a particular people. But we do also, by sort of a line extension, to other areas that are politically incorrect. And Steve is extremely interested in what he calls human biodiversity, and it goes really to your earlier question. People are not just a blank slate culturally, but there may actually be, genetic differences between them in intelligence levels and so on. That was the message really of the bell curve, the Charles Morris great book. Now, just as immigration was shut out of the debate, the IQ issue has been shut out of the debate, and that's why we write about things that people are not going to see anywhere else. So the answer is, it is very important, but it's not the only argument. In Alienation, for example, I didn't discuss the IQ issue at all, although I had read Murray's book in manuscript. I knew it was coming out. He estimated in the bell curve that the average IQ of the immigrant inflow was significantly skewed downwards by the peculiar ways that the 65 Immigration Act worked. And if that's so, of course, it means that these people are never going to converge systematically with the American national average. So the problems are much more severe even than just getting them to speak English and so on.
David Frum, and I'm not surprised by this, I was surprised by this, and you'll understand when I finish the question. David Frum gave Alienation a rather glowing review. Yet he and others, for lack of a better term, neocons, I don't know why I just don't like using that word, are kind of schizoid about immigration. Why is that? I mean, what's going on there?
I've known Dave for many years, and I know him personally, and he unquestionably does get the argument about immigration. He knows that there are problems with it, but the fact is, it's a very difficult thing to raise in this, and maintain your viability as the sort of establishment commentator, even on the right. The neoconservatives, who I think are a real group, I mean, they're a faction of the conservative movement.
Not debating that they exist.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just hate the term.
Well, it can lead to trouble. But a lot of them are fanatical immigration enthusiasts. Mm-hmm. Not all of them, but the leadership is, and they're a group they're a very disciplined group, and they know that the leadership, people like Norman Podhoretz and so on, are fanatical immigration enthusiasts, and they're not going to cross him. If immigration reform, if and when immigration reform becomes viable politically, they will change sides, but not until.